It's okay? Okay. Hello again. Again, this is Eliyahu from Elijah's Codes, and today I have the great privilege and honor to be interviewing Robert James. Last week I interviewed Owen James, his brother, and I met Robert at a workshop that Owen led, and he started talking about his work with men and with divorced fathers, and how he helps divorced fathers to learn to get along with their exes, and in this way to be able to meet with their children. And what he said was so interesting to me and sounded so important that I decided that I would like to interview Robert as well. And how are you today, Robert?
I'm fine.
Okay. So, Robert, we'll get into your work with men. It's very, very important. But I'd first like to ask you a little bit about your growing up and your being a musician and about your life before you became a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And what brought you to become a counselor.
Okay.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself and about your youth and what you learned.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm brought up in a mixed family. My mother's Russian Jewish. My father's Welsh. They met in San Francisco, and I'm brought up in a family where there was a lot of duality. You say, I mean, my father was very loving, at the same time quite violent. So you had the insecurity of knowing what's going to happen in any different circumstance. And I think both parents were rather afraid of conflicts.
They
And
fought a lot.
Hmm?
They would fight.
They wouldn't fight. Mother had her system of being quiet for 2-3 days. If Daddy did something, then she would tell us to tell Daddy. Robert, tell Daddy it's dinner time.
Oh.
Because Daddy, it's dinner time. Okay, tell Mother I'm coming in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So we learned quite young to be the, what do you call it?
The middleman.
The middleman. And I'm the third of 5 children, right in the middle block. The first boy. So I believe I was very welcome at being the first son in the family.
So you're the firstborn son, but the third child.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then came my sister and then my younger brother, who was Owen. And he was born, as I see it in a way, sort of the prince of the family.
Meaning what?
Meaning that,
Prince. You said the prince.
yeah,
Okay.
meaning that he saw a lot of the violence but was never abused physically.
Whereas you were.
Right. I started playing the violin at the age of 3.5. I don't know if it was my choice. I can't say it was my choice, but I mean, it was put on my shoulder and said, "Here's a bow, play." And I remember my first violin teacher, Mrs. Nistel, who was a beautiful, beautiful lady, very beautiful. We had this little book, which I found some years ago, with little gold stars on every page, where she wrote these beautiful pictures and wrote the tunes, and it was very lovely. She was such a beautiful person. That was at the Community Music School down on Cap Street in San Francisco. And my sister Karen already played the piano, and Lenore maybe started the cello around the same time. Maybe she was a little older, but around the cello. So we had a piano trio. We played together. And I found programs from the community music school where it says, Robert, 6 years of age, Lenore 8, Karen 10, playing Mozart trio or Haydn trio.
Oh my goodness!
So we were very talented kids, it seems.
You were prodigies. My goodness.
In a way.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you became a professional musician.
I became a professional musician. At the age of 18, I changed over from violin to viola. We did a lot of playing together in San Francisco. My brother Owen played the flute. Megan, she took up dancing. So we all were in the art, music and art. And you can imagine what it looked like at the house. It was a rather small house. Upstairs was one bedroom, living room, a bath between the kitchen and the bedroom. Downstairs was one large room and one small room. And you can imagine 5 children practicing.
Wow.
Piano in one room, violin in the other room, cello. Megan dancing upstairs. We had a bar, and you hear thunk, thunk, thunk of the feet. And Richard Owen on the flute. And Mother would go around from each of us and sit with us. How she had the patience, I never know, but she was amazing. So she would sit with us and practice an hour. And then my next teacher was, what was her name? Mary Pasmo, who in the 50s, when I was about 14, because of the McCarthy movement and the anti-Americanism.
You mean anti-communism?
Anti-communism.
Yes.
Right.
Where they saw communists hiding under the beds, communists left and right, and people's lives were destroyed by just accusing them of being communists.
Right.
Yes.
My father belonged to the Socialist Party. He was very active. He was, I think, the librarian or the bookkeeper because years ago I found 3 boxes of books that we hid, about 50 copies of the Communist Manifesto,
Wow.
Marx, Engels, Lothair. All these books were in 3 crates, most of them water damaged, but I took a few of them with me. So the story, it wasn't just a story, it became a reality when I found these boxes. And Mary Pasmo belonged to the Socialist Party. She lost her job in the San Francisco Symphony.
Who belonged?
My violin teacher.
Okay.
So she and her sister, which were quite a well-known duet, violin and cello, both lost their jobs in the symphony and moved to Hawaii, which was not a state at that time.
A territory.
A territory, right. And I remember at the age of about 14 when I knocked on the door a Sunday, bang, bang, 2 well-dressed men came in. And said they were from the department of the anti-communist.
Department of the what?
From the McCarthy.
Okay, they were investigating
They were investigating.
communists.
Communists, right.
Okay, wow.
And somebody had told them
That you were.
that my father
Yes.
was Elvin. I remember standing, holding my father's hand in front of the bookcase. We had taken out quite a few of the books, but he left 3 books right in the middle, smack, so nobody could miss seeing them. Nobody's going to put me down, my father. So, and they came in. I was holding my father's hand. As I see myself shaking,
Whoa.
knowing that they could take my father and put him in prison. They looked at the books. They saw them. I'm sure they saw the books. They couldn't have missed it. Nobody could miss those books. He turned around and said, "That's fine, thank you," and left.
And?
That was it.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I was like, thank God.
Okay. So that was amazing. People's lives were destroyed. That was
Yeah, a lot of people's lives. A lot of
a lot of
people.
innocent people as well. People
I mean, they're all innocent.
all innocent, but I mean, they were all innocent and all were following their understanding of what's best for the world. But even people who were, many people who weren't communists, who maybe knew a communist once
Right,
when they were
right.
young.
That's out with them.
Okay.
Mhm.
A lot of people were destroyed. People committed suicide. It was very hard. People were thrown in jail. Okay. So, Owen, so you have you had and you still have, I'm sure, a great love of music, and you went on to become a professional musician in a symphony. Is that right?
Right. At the age of, I think about 17, I won a scholarship, which gave me some money. I moved down to Los Angeles for a year, studied with Kapinski, of the famous Kapinski Trio. And after the year, he said, "Robert, you're ready to become a solo violinist."
Whoa, a soloist! Wow.
Because the last thing I did was Prokofiev and Bartok violin concertos. And then I said, well, I don't think I want to be a solo violinist. I want to change to viola,
Okay.
because I love the sound of the viola. So I came back to San Francisco and started playing the viola. And then I went to the Santa Barbara music camp with my sister. And Mr. Barbanel, who was the conductor of the Salt Lake Symphony, and Sally Peck, who was the principal violist, were there as the conductor and teacher and the head of the whole department. And they invited me to come to Salt Lake City as the violist.
As the first violinist?
No, not the first. That was Sally Peck, just in the orchestra.
Okay.
So I moved to Salt Lake City for 2 years with the Mormons,
Yes.
and that was quite a shock.
How so? How was it?
That was quite a shock.
Why? What was the shock about it?
Whole country, it felt like they were under a cloud of giving up,
Of giving up. That's an interesting, surprising for me
Of,
thing to say. Giving up their authority? Giving up what?
well, giving up their authority, giving up their. The Mormon Church is very strict
Yes.
church. It has a lot of rules. I mean,
Especially back then, I suppose.
yeah. The beautiful thing about it was that there was no poverty. Everybody's taken care of. They take care of their people. You pay 10% tithing,
Yes.
and that was incredible. Seeing that there's no poverty, they're taken care of, and that becomes the problem: being taken care of.
Ah.
We're taking care of you. We're your master.
Ah, that's interesting.
And the feeling of people being under this lid of oppression
Okay.
by the state.
Do they feel it as oppression?
Yeah.
Some of them, I'm sure.
Some
Some
of
of them not.
No, some of them not. I spent a lot of time with a violist and a violinist. They were married, and all they wanted to do was to leave Utah, but they couldn't do it because it was their life,
Yes. How interesting.
and they wanted to leave, but they couldn't leave. They were locked into this system.
Okay. Okay, so you were 2 years in Salt Lake City Symphony Orchestra, is that right?
Right, then I went to the San Francisco Symphony.
Wow. I mean, I've heard of the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, and I understand it's one of the great orchestras, maybe even in the world, so that must have been... how was that for you?
It was a great orchestra. Wonderful conductors, wonderful people. It was very good.
And you loved it?
I loved it. I got married to Wendy, a blonde Jewish beauty.
Ha
Things didn't work out. She had a lot of... she had very difficulty being faithful.
Okay.
And we had a child, Robin. And then I was called into the army because of Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
And I panicked, of course. And then I thought, well, wonderful. I could go to the 7th Army Orchestra,
Yep, that sounds like a good solution.
one of the great orchestras.
Uh-huh.
Great conductors, stationed, I think it was in Frankfurt.
Uh-huh.
And then when I checked into it, I found that they had closed it.
Oh, well.
And then I panicked. What am I going to do? I'm not going to Vietnam.
No, why? I mean, what a stupid thing for somebody with an ability and a talent like yours to tote a rifle and walk through patties. I mean, rice patties. It would have been. No, I understand. I understand defending your country, but what a waste that would be. So, what did you do?
Well, I had a Swedish friend, or my wife and I had a Swedish friend, and he was coming back to Sweden because he didn't want to be in the army either. And he went to the university, and as long as you're in university, you're considered an American. He was Swedish.
Right.
So he was scared stiff of being drafted also.
Okay.
So he came back to Sweden to do his military thing and talked a lot about Sweden and how fantastic it was for bringing up children.
Okay.
With the social system and the caretaking and everything. So, okay, we'll go to Sweden for a year.
Okay.
So there was a Norwegian and a Norwegian violist and a Swedish violinist in the orchestra in San Francisco who gave me connections in Sweden. So before I came to Sweden, I had a job in the Gothenburg Symphony.
Oh.
In the viola section. So I had a job when I came to Sweden, so we left, we thought for a year. We took leave of absence from the orchestra, came to Sweden, and I'm still in Sweden. 64 I came to Sweden, I was 24 years of age.
And how long were you in Sweden?
I'm still there.
What do you mean?
I still live in Sweden, in Stockholm.
Oh, you don't live in the U.S.?
No.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, I'm born in San Francisco, but I live in Stockholm, Sweden.
Okay. So how is that? I've always thought about how beautiful Scandinavia is and how lucky they are that they don't have the problems, let's say, that we have in Israel or in the United States that we have. Mm. How is it to live in Sweden?
Well, when I first came there, it felt like I'm back in Utah. It was very strange feeling. Because 64 very much was rather conservative, rather controlled by the state. Things have changed drastically since I've been there because of the influx of a lot of foreigners. Right now there's a lot of from Iraq, from Africa, because of all the war going on. So there's a lot of racial mixture in Sweden now, which wasn't there before. So the society has opened up immensely.
Okay.
And Stockholm's an incredibly beautiful city, made up of different islands, with water all around. It's very beautiful. One of the most beautiful cities there are.
Okay.
So I mean, the winters are cold, long, rather dark sometimes.
Yes, I suppose.
But then San Francisco had its cold days too, with the fog coming in, rolling in, the dewy fog coming down the hill from where we lived in San Francisco. You go outside and you couldn't see your hand in front of you. So, I mean...
So Robert, so you were married to this American Jewish lady.
Right.
And I understand it didn't work out. Did you marry again?
I married again. I have 5 children. I married 4 times. I have 5 children.
Whoa. Okay.
Ages of 20 to 48. My eldest daughter lives outside of London. 3 of my children live in Stockholm, and 1 lives in Gothenburg. And I have 3 grandchildren.
Very nice. Okay. So, when did you get out of the symphony business and start with your counseling of men and working with men's group? And why did you make that switch?
Well, when I was about 12, I said to myself, I'm not going to have the same relationship my mother and father have, which was not a good relationship. I'm going to have a family. We're going to live together all our lives. We're going to have children. It's going to be the perfect, wonderful Disneyland family.
Well, that's the American dream.
The American dream.
Leave it to Beaver and all. Little House on the Prairie.
Right. So I made a decision.
I love Little House on the Prairie. Yes, go ahead.
And
You made a decision.
I ended up trying to realize that decision to have the happy family, which meant for me getting divorced 4 times, having 5 children, and still not having the little house in the.
And they were all Scandinavian Americans. Yes. Yes. Say that again.
What?
What are you saying here? That you didn't realize your dream of Little House on the Prairie. Is that
No,
right?
I have never realized it, but I've realized lots of other things. Why it doesn't work out. The inner conflict, the patterns that we're brought up with that we have to discharge, our longings, especially men, which have this incredible fear of being separated, of being alone.
You think men have that more than women?
Men have it a lot more than women.
Okay. We need to get into all of these things. What else?
I mean, almost from birth, when we're taken from our mother, the pattern starts of being left. We're not nurtured in the same way as girls are. We don't get as much love. We're left by ourselves more.
We're brought up to be tough, isn't that
We're brought
right?
up to be tough, and I could do it on my own.
Yes.
I don't need anybody. I'm proud, I'm big, I'm strong. I'll go to war and I won't cry, and you hit me and I won't cry. And we learn to be better to be alone than to ask for help.
Yes. At least it was that way, Robert, maybe when you and I were growing up. Do you think it's changing? I mean...
It's changing, but it has its problems. Because we're brought up in all societies, doesn't matter where you are. The man has always been the breadwinner. The woman has been the caretaker of the home. These patterns have changed, especially in the Western world. But the, what do you call it, not the karma, but the tradition for men to be able to leave the role of the breadwinner and share it with a woman, with your partner, and for her to leave the caretaking of the family or the house and go on and be part of the breadwinning system, it has its difficulties because you still have this inbuilt system, society system, that I'm the breadwinner. I'm the breadwinner. And women still in the Western world take 80% or 90% of organizing family meetings, taking care of the children. Even in Sweden, where it's an incredible system where the men could be home for half a year and be paid for it.
Wow.
Some men are home for a year because the wife wants to go to work again. I've had a lot of men in my group that have been home for 3 months when the child is from 1 month, or 2 months, they're home until the child is 5 months. And it's incredible, but you still have the thing that there's something wrong. I don't feel really at home with this yet. So it has changed, but there's still a lot of problems.
There's still a lot of problems.
Yeah.
You know, I was discussing with my friend Jeff about, well, when we were growing up, there were no good, realistic male role models.
Right.
And also, our father was out at work all day long, and we didn't really know what he was doing. And we grew up with our mothers in the home, and this problem of, well, in the old days, a son would learn a trade from a father, and he would understand he would get that essence of what it is to be a man from a closeness with the Father, and how that's been gone for quite a long time. And okay, so my point is, what is the key what is the key for men finding themselves as opening up to their sensitive side, to learn to love, to learn to be complete, and not to be so wounded, not to be so. What is it we need to realize, to discover? You've been leading men's groups for, you said, 20 years.
Right.
What do we need to learn as men?
Well, one thing we need to learn is to dare to express what we want, what we feel. There are two different roles. I mean, the man is the fixer, and the woman is the taking care of the feelings.
The fixer, what do you mean by that?
Well, we think very fast and how to organize things, how to fix things. We're very quick at coming with directions, opinions, instead of we haven't learned how to listen. I could give you an example. I was at my daughter's school having lunch, and they went to the Steiner School, Waldorf School in Stockholm. And I was there having lunch with a whole group of teachers and children. I taught violin at the school. And the boys, after 5 minutes of eating, rushed out, all of them, bang, to play football. The girls, they sat by their tables and they talked about life, feelings, what's going on. Already at that age, they developed the capacity of listening, of feeling each other's, what's going on, learning.
What age?
This was already at the age of 8, 9, 10.
Okay.
And then they did an experiment in Sweden where they filmed a day home care center where the children are from 8 in the morning till 4 or 5 in the afternoon, 6 in the afternoon sometimes, to see how the people in charge treated the children, if they treated them the same way, boys and girls. And they were amazed when they looked back at the tape. I didn't do that. I didn't give that boy more attention than that girl, because the boy was putting up his hand and saying, me, me, me. And they were amazed about how the difference in treating the boys and the girls was so different, and they didn't even believe it themselves.
How different?
Well, boys get a lot more attention because they're a lot more active, and they demand more attention. Mm-hmm. They're first. They have a lineup. Boys run to the front. They automatically become leaders in a way because they demand. And the girls become more passive. So the men have to learn to listen, and the women have to learn to be more aggressive. I mean, even in politics, I mean, how many women are in high places compared to men?
But that's changing.
It's changing slowly. But you talk to women in high places, and it's very difficult because they're still expected to. Can you get me a cup of coffee, please?
I know that Joseph Rael, beautiful painted arrow, the teacher of Owen, he says in his book, Being in Vibration, he says that we have to alchemically grow into our opposite. So men need to alchemically develop their female side, and females have to alchemically grow into and develop their male side. That's like what. That's our challenge. So you would agree with that, then?
Yeah, definitely. That female and male, it's there are many instances in these first-time papa groups.
First what?
First-time father
First-time father
Groups.
Okay.
where I work with the men to spend time listening to their partners who come home from work and say, I have to tell you what happened today. Sit down and listen. And the men, oh, no, not again. Can't you call your girlfriend? It takes time for them to realize how important it is to be on that end, to be able to build up a relationship through mutual understanding of each other. I mean, if you don't listen to the other person, you'll never find out who they are. There'll still be a blank to you. Because in a relationship, you meet somebody, you fall in love, and what are you looking for? You're looking for somebody to fill you up with the parts that you don't have yourself.
And that won't work, will
That
it?
won't work. So it's like going to a gas station. Fill me up. I need 98% petrol. Because I don't have this, and you do. And what happens very much is the women's role is that I'd love to take care of you. I'm going to improve your life, and then we're going to be a great couple. The caretaking, that won't work. Because what happens then is that it starts off nicely. All the appreciation, all the love, all the feeling of, oh, she really loves me and he really loves me, buys me candy and flowers and brings me out to the parties. And then you realize that something's missing. Something's missing in our relationship and you don't know what. You don't have the faintest idea what's missing because you've already built these patterns of behavior. You've probably heard of the book Games People Play. Very old book from the 60s.
No, I have not.
I forget who wrote it, but I mean, there's thousands of books written on the same subject.
Okay.
How we're going to roles and keep these roles very strict about in a relationship. And that's one of the things I'll talk about later in the divorced father groups. How you work to break the balance. And when you break the balance, and the other person has to respond differently.
How you work to break it or to make it?
Break the balance.
What balance?
The balance of the game, of people playing, of having their own roles and keeping the game going. A relationship game.
We want to break that balance.
You want to break the balance.
What?
If you don't break the balance, then you'll never have a life because you keep yourself locked in a certain pattern, both of you, because you're both afraid of separation, you're afraid of being alone, you're afraid of ending relationship.
So you go on playing roles.
You go on playing roles.
And you never become who you are.
You never become who you are. And you could go one relationship to another relationship. That's what I did. My role was find a happy family. Find this family that will be together but I wasn't mature enough. I didn't know what I was doing. I was looking for acknowledgement, for love. And as soon as the love left, or I thought it left, I started looking for new acknowledgements.
Yes.
New ways of being appreciated, new ways of feeling. Somebody loves me. Just love me, please, just love me. And so I went from one relationship to another, from one affair to another affair. abusing, in a way you could say abusing women, abusing sex, abusing my own life, my own potential to really developing into my own person. Being able to stand and say, I am who I am. And it took a lot of years.
Yes.
Took a lot of years.
So,
I've now been by myself for 5-6 years.
Oh, and tell me about your work with first time.
Robert.
What?
Robert.
Sorry. I'm
No
sorry.
problem.
Robert, tell me about your work with first-time fathers. What is the problem, the difficulties that first-time fathers have to deal with? Do you mean divorced fathers, or maybe they're still married? Or what do you?
They're married or partners. In Sweden, it's basically the same. We call it sambo, and they're living together but not being married. You have basically the same rights in Sweden.
Okay.
The same, what do you call it? Law rights.
Okay. So you work with, a lot of them are still married or are living with their
Well,
partner.
the first-time fathers, they're all waiting for the first child.
Oh, they're waiting. Okay.
Yeah, they haven't had the first child yet.
So what characterizes them, and what is it they need to learn? What are the problems that they have to deal with?
One of the first problems, one of the biggest problems, is I asked them, have you 100% accepted being the father of this child? Have you gone into yourself and said, I accept being a father, and it's my choice as much as my partner's choice? Have you done that? No. Why? Well, do you really want the child? I don't really know. Well, what are you afraid of? Losing my freedom? And these are men between 25 and 40 years of age. They're not
Kids.
They're not kids. Losing my freedom, not feeling mature enough. I haven't had a father that's taught me how to be a father. I haven't had a role model. I'm afraid of what's going to happen when the child comes, if I'll be left out. I don't know how to be a father. So I work with them in one session, making the commitment, going through all the fears, making the commitment that I, in my heart, 100%, accept being the father to this child, and it's my commitment, and I make the decision. And when they've done that, then they could become empowered in the father role. And then we talked about bonding.
Okay.
Because the women already start bonding by exactly the same time that the egg becomes pregnated
Right.
with the child. So I talk to the men about, do you put your hand on the child, on your partner's stomach, and sit there for 15, 20 minutes and feel the child? Do you talk to the child? Do you sing to the child? Do you read stories to the child? Do you bond with the child in your partner? No. Why? I feel foolish. Singing. Well, tell them about your life. Tell them about you, who you are. Because they will recognize your voice when they come out. They will know exactly who you are by your voice.
And even after they're born, they don't do that very often.
No. So then they're able to go through this feeling of genounce. I said, what would you like to do? Oh, I'd love to do that. I said, your partner would love you to do that. She'd be the most thrilled woman in the world if you sat down with her and said, give me 20 minutes. You just lie down there. I want to hold my hand on the baby. I'm going to sing to it. And when you explain to them that they will recognize your voice when you come out, it becomes more powerful for them, knowing that the child takes in the voice. When the child comes out, father talks to them, I know who that is.
Yeah.
It's an incredible, I did it very much with my last two children. Spent hours sometimes just telling them stories, being with them.
You know, Owen, okay. Oh, God. Sorry, Robert. Well, you look alike also.
I know.
Okay, Robert. You know, I saw an interview with a very well-known Israeli psychologist, and he said that the major fear of women is that of being violated.
Mm.
But the major or attacked or having violence inflicted on them, whereas the major fear of men, according to him, is that they will commit violence. They will that they will do it, not that somebody will do it to them,
Mm-hmm.
but that they will do it to somebody else.
Mm.
And so you have this phenomenon, which I could really understand, of fathers afraid to pick up their babies, afraid to come too close. Do you have any comments about this and whether in your eyes it's true or not?
I think it's partly true on the women's side. But it depends where you come from.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I mean, if you look at the world, it's very different because there's certain societies where women are considered nothing, second-grade citizens,
Or third,
or third. I mean, you have India,
Muslim countries.
Muslim countries, where women could be stoned to death. They have no rights at all. They're completely, and violence in those countries against women is protected by law.
Yes, it is.
And so in those countries, I can see that is an incredible truth, where women are really scared to death of violence. And men use violence as a way of controlling. And I've learned it at a very young age, that violence is right, violence is okay. I mean, in Sweden, there's a law where you're not allowed to hit your child or spank them, or they could go to the police and my father hit me, come and get him. England, they passed a law where you're not allowed to slap the child in the face, but you're allowed to spank them, certain parts of their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still legal in England.
But I would suppose a lot of men, even in Sweden and Scandinavia, are afraid of their inner violence.
Yeah. Oh, we're all afraid of our inner violence.
And that this is a problem with men more than women. Wouldn't you say?
It's a problem, definitely. Definitely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you were talking about first-time fathers and what you teach them, and I love what you said until now. What else can you tell us about your work with first-time fathers?
Well, one thing I tell them at the beginning, and it's hard for many people to understand this, you're all born good. You're born beautifully. You're born one with God. You're born good. What do you mean we're born good? You're born good. And then start...
Loving. Capable of love. Right?
Yeah. Capable of love, capable of giving unconditional love and receiving unconditional love. And then what happens? At a very, very early age, all of a sudden, love becomes a handled value. You do this, and I'll give you love. You do that, I'll give you love.
Conditional.
Conditional. Right, from unconditional to conditional. And I think in Jewish families it's very much, look what you did to me.
Yeah, guilt.
Guilt.
Yeah.
Look what you did to me. And you get the guilt, you get the shame. What did I do? And then you take, then comes the taking care of, the reversal, where the child becomes the parent, and the parent becomes the child, where the child is taking care of the parent's feelings, their existence in a way.
So they never get a childhood, those children.
They never get a child, and that's most children.
Really?
That's most children. There are very few children that get a childhood.
Whoa, what a statement that is.
Mm.
So you try to teach these men not to make these mistakes, or what?
Yeah. To stand up for one thing that men do, which we've talked about a lot in these first-time father groups, which I've used a lot in helping the men in the divorce father groups. Say a weekend is coming up.
A weekend is coming.
Yeah. And the men think, great, I'll go to the football game, I'll meet my friends, we'll go out and have a couple of beers. So Friday, the partner comes in and says, tomorrow we're going to my mother's house. We're going to have dinner. And the man goes, okay, dear. And you ask him why. I'm afraid if I say against her, she'll leave me, and I'll be alone.
Okay.
And this is so embedded. I was at a co-counseling weekend about 2 months ago. We had a family weekend without the children. And there was a men's panel, 10 men. And each one of them said exactly the same thing. Why can't I become, like the man in the family, why can't I say what I want? Why don't I dare say what I want in my life? Okay, why? I'm afraid of being left.
That's a real problem.
And
because then they could explode one day, can't they? If they're always afraid of saying what they want, then that's a recipe for explosion, is it not?
Definitely. So I tell them, look, if you've made that mistake and ever said that, look, tomorrow I plan on going with my friends, let's talk about this. Or talk to yourself and say, shit, I did it again. Now I have to accept it. Can I accept it 100%? Can I make the decision mine? Can I make it my decision that we're going so that we can have a nice time? Otherwise the men go to the house with the mother and they're thinking all the time, I'd rather be with my friends. What am I doing here? Shut up. Don't. And it becomes very, that's, as you say, that's where the aggression can come in.
Yes.
Doing something against their own will, and the fight starts. They start arguing. And what happens when they start arguing, you could see it. You could see when they flip and become 2-year-olds.
Yes.
All of a sudden you have 2 2-year-olds arguing. And you could see it. I could see it immediately, what age they are. So you could say that, okay, you're 1.5, you're 2, you're 2.5. What's going on? What happened to you at that age? Stop. What happened? Let's go back and see. Can you see a picture of you with your mother or your father at that age? Go back and imagine yourself. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself at 2 years of age. Where are you? What's it look like? What color? What do you see? What happened? To go back and then to be able to discharge it, to be able to release the anger, the sorrow of that time, that something happened, that you weren't able to express what you wanted to do. You swallowed it. All these built up swallowing all of this potential of being a human being gets locked into you physically.
Because you don't express your feelings and needs.
Well, what happens if you express it at that age? You'll either be told that you're doing wrong,
Oh, at that age, you're right. Very
Yeah.
often, yeah.
or you'll be pushed away and said, get out of here.
So as an adult, you're afraid to express your feelings and needs.
Yeah, well, you've been brought up with all these patterns, become like a recording in your brain, and they get more and more of them get put into this pattern block where and it becomes very confusing because you don't see. You can call them blind spots. You don't see the blind spots. They're there. You have to learn how to see them, to be able to release them, to be able to discharge all these feelings of inadequacy, all these feelings of pent-up fear, anger, sorrow, all the love you wanted you didn't get, all the things that have turned you into a victim instead of being in control of your life. You let someone else control your life, and at the same time you're controlling somebody else's life
By not being honest with them.
by not being honest with them.
No, that's why I think, for instance, same-sex groups are so important.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a men's group or a women's group, we could start looking at these destructive and disassociative patterns that we have, and we can work with them together as equals, don't you think?
Definitely. Definitely. It becomes very powerful because you become supporting each other, like divorce father groups. They come to me at a period of deep distress. They haven't seen the children maybe for months, maybe for a year, maybe for 2 years, some of them 4 years.
Why?
What can I do? Okay, what happened? My wife left me. She took the children. She accused me of being violent. She accused me of sex with a child. She accused me of this. Yes, but what happened? My wife left me, and she's terrible. She hates me, and she wants revenge. But what happened? What actually happened in the relationship up to the time your wife left you? What did it look like? Oh, that.
Were you violent? Were you sexually abusive?
No, none of the men have been violent that way or sexually abusive.
I'm sure some of them have, Robert.
Violence, I see sexually abusive, none of the men in none of the groups for the years, and there were a lot of groups going on by different counselors, have been sexually abusive. They don't come to the group.
They don't get to your groups.
No.
Okay.
They get to other groups.
They get to other groups. Okay.
But violence, I see violence in two different ways. There's violence where the man is violent because of the need to control or from his past. Then there's the violence from total frustration of, it's my weekend, I'm supposed to pick up the child on Friday at 4 o'clock, knock on the door, child's not there. Next week, same thing happens. Oh, the child's sick, she can't be with you this weekend. This frustration of not seeing the child builds up. You knock on the door again, a little louder. It's my weekend. Sorry. And then the man becomes aggressive in his frustration. This is a aggressive frustration, which isn't violent in that way of. It could turn into violence.
Okay.
Which the woman then uses against him by calling the police.
Which is not to excuse his violence. You're talking about a phenomenon It's not to excuse it.
It's not to excuse it, definitely not.
You're just describing something that goes on.
Right. That is then used against the man. And she says, I'm afraid of him.
Okay.
And she might be afraid of him. And in very few of these cases has he ever hit the woman. He has used violence or aggression, looking angry in the face, yelling, which is a form of violence, but it's through frustration of not being able to, not having the right to see his child, which is given to him by the law.
Okay. I want to say something. I want to get into this. I want to get into your work with divorced fathers.
Mm-hmm.
But before I do, I want to go back into this phenomenon of the husband who has plans of meeting with his friends, and or maybe taking his family to the football game, and his wife says, "Oh well, we're going to go to my mom and have dinner." Mm-hmm. Marshall Rosenberg, the genius of nonviolent communication, the man who invented this wonderful way of learning to communicate, he calls somebody like this, man or woman, who will automatically say yes because he wants to be liked. Mm. He calls them a yes-saying jackal.
Yeah.
Okay? And he says the problem is, one day this person, a jackal is somebody who's cut off from his own feelings and needs, and cut off from the feelings and needs of other people as well. And he says one day the yes-saying jackal, whether it's man or woman, is going to explode. Okay? So the key here, according to the beautiful teaching, which I recommend, of nonviolent communication and Rosenberg, is to learn how to be connected with our feelings and needs and to express them, and to be connected with our partners and the other person's feelings and needs, and to be able to tune into that. What's alive in ourselves? The feelings and needs. What's alive in the other person? The feelings and needs. Not to be trapped in their head with judgments and labeling. And the jackal is always thinking, the problem with you is always into labeling and into judgment. So we've got to learn this if we're going to survive as a species. And so now you've been talking about divorced fathers not being able to see their children. So what do you guide them with, suggest to them, so that they can, in the end, achieve this which they're wanting? How? What do they need to learn? What do they need to do?
Well, I start the group with everybody tells their story, which is very one-sided because they haven't done anything wrong.
Yes, exactly.
And then after the first hour and a half, when they've told their story, these are groups that meet between 10 and 12 times for about 3 hours each.
Okay.
And at the end of, then we have a break, and I say, from now on, from this moment on, you don't talk badly of your ex. You don't blame her. We're going into what your responsibility of what happened. You have to know what happened in the true picture, where you were in the relationship, why it happened to you, even going back to what made you go into that relationship, to see yourself, to look at yourself. Why did you choose it? Well, I was living at home. I wanted to get out from my parents. And she was there. But did you want? I don't know if I wanted to be with her. What a silly question. We loved each other, we thought. Or we met in college. We had the same ideas. And she was so nice to me. I mean, there's thousands of different variations. And then you have And I started, as I said at the beginning, you have two people coming from different backgrounds, different class structures. You have maybe a working class that gets together with the owner class or middle class, different religions, different upbringings. Maybe one is brought up with very strict upbringing, the other one is with a very lenient, free way of being brought up. You have already here things that could cause conflict. Two ways of looking at the same picture. One from this side, one from this side. And your question was, how do you bring these together? In some cases, I don't think you can, because it's too wrong from the beginning. I mean, say that you, and this happens more and more, interracial marriage, which is nothing wrong with it, but you say you have somebody coming from a society where the man is dominant and uses violence as a way of life, meets this girl, they fall in love, he's all beauty, he's all wonderful, he's all love, he's all expecting, and she's, whoa, what a great man. And they get married, and then all of a sudden, well, this is who I really am. You're going to serve me. Now, I have an example of this. My sister's daughter was living in China, learning Chinese medicine, and she married a Chinese man. And he said, well, she's wonderful, she serves me tea.
Okay.
And she's a very strong-willed girl. So they get married in China. After about 2 months, move back to America, to San Francisco. And he realizes that that's not the woman I thought it was. She's not going to serve me tea.
Mm-hmm.
And he has the violent pattern of, it's okay to hit the kids,
Oh, yeah.
as a way of discipline. And I'm the man, you're the woman. Do as I wish. And she realized that, my God, what did I get myself into? This wasn't the one he was when we were together. He was loving. He was beautiful. He gave me all these things. I thought, wonderful. And then all of a sudden, well, this is who I am. I didn't let you see it because then you wouldn't have married me.
Yeah. Okay. So, Owen, what do you counsel the divorced fathers so they can make a level of peace with their exes and get to see their kids? What do you tell them?
Well, the first thing is, as I said, that you look into your own patterns. What actually happened in the marriage? Were you unfaithful to her when she was pregnant? And that's quite a few cases. Quite a few cases in the first year of pregnancy. The man, if they haven't made the commitment to be a father, and I think in very few places in the world, I mean, the father makes an actual commitment. I am the father of this child, and I am 100% in the church. We say we are. Yes, I want a child with you. I'd love to have a child with you. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Not. No. Shit, she's pregnant. Shit. Maybe next year would have been better, or the year after that. So, going into what actually happened in the marriage that brought about the divorce, that brought about the woman leaving, and in very many cases it's the women that leave. And the women know already between 1.5 and 3 years before the divorce that they're going to get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting phenomenon. Which is why going to counselors after you're on the way to divorce hardly ever helps. Because the woman goes in with the picture already in her mind that she's left the marriage, and the man is at the beginning stage of help, let's save this. Let's do something to save this. My God, we got to save this. Let's go to a counselor. And she's already, and we'll go to the counselor, but I'm already finished with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I can think of examples of that, yes.
so going to the man and saying, what happened? Looking into their lives, why did you choose that woman? What made you? And most of it that happens is, as I talked about in my own life, the woman becomes pregnant. She's involved with the child, she's involved with herself, she's involved with the body, the hormones, the change of moods. She becomes more closed in, as she should. And I tell the women in these groups, take at least 1 month off before the child is born, to be with the child, to be with your inner self, to bond with the child. Don't work. Be home.
You tell that to the woman?
Yeah.
Okay.
And take Mama Yoga.
Okay.
Of course, for mother yoga is very good for you.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So we talked to the fathers, and they said, well, I felt left out. 4th month of the pregnancy, I felt left out. Things had changed. Not what I expected. And then I met this girl at my job, and she gave me a lot of attention. And I didn't mean it to happen, but we had an affair. And my wife found out. I said, and you're wondering why she's behaving the way she is? You're wondering why that she wants revenge? She doesn't need to get revenge, but I mean, at the most important part of her life, she's having a child, you're supposed to be bonding as a family, and you left her in that way. You were still living with her, but you actually left her. You actually dislocated yourself from the...
You broke a huge trust.
You broke a huge trust. Or they feel left out. And what do? They start working later. They don't come home. They spend hours and hours at the office.
Another breaking of the trust.
Another breaking of the trust. And these things they don't see.
Yeah.
And when you get them to see what has actually gone on, and to start working with, well, what happens at the beginning is you have expectations. And what happens with expectations? What's at the other end of that?
You don't live up to them, or they don't come about, no?
So you have, what do you call it? You become
disappointed,
frustrated. And expectations and disappointments, they're the same thing.
Yes.
Because you're having expectations, as I said at the beginning, of this woman, things that you yourself are lacking, you expect to be given by her.
Which can never work.
It never works. And it starts triggering, you start accusing her of things that you see. Why are you like that? And that's the same thing you wanted before. All of a sudden it becomes a negative part of the woman. And every time that happens, it starts triggering you, and you accuse her, instead of looking into myself and said, that's me. That's me that wants that. And to start looking at that part of the relationship for these men is like, oh my God. Am I looking at myself? The mirror, using the partner as your own mirror, looking back into yourself, is that what is it that I need to develop? To be able to live with myself, to be able to live with my partner. What do I need to develop? Well, it's all these things that you were looking for to be given by somebody else. All these things you're longing for. Not just love, not just being taken care of, but everything that she has that you don't have, you wanted. She was happy to give them to you at the beginning because that's the way you got together. And you find out they're not there. So we start working with forgiveness. First, to forgive yourself for doing what you did, forgiving yourself for the behavior patterns, and for being able to love yourself. So the question is, where would you put yourself on a scale of 1 to 5? Oh, 5, lowest. You love yourself 5? Who's number 1? Oh, my wife, my children, my teacher, and I'm down here. You're number 5? Okay, let's put you up here number 1. Because if you love yourself first, then you could give love to the other people.
Indeed.
Then the love can come out to you and you're going to get it back. But as long as you put yourself at the bottom of the pile, there can never be a relationship with another person, which is true. So we work with that. We work with forgiveness, first forgiving yourself, then forgiving your partner for... Yeah, we were talking about this second part of the first day, where you're not allowed to say anything negative about your partner. So maybe the third time I start saying, I'd like you to appreciate your partner 5 different ways. Tell me what you like about her. Shock. After what she's done to me, I hate her. Hate everything about her. I've never loved her. Stop. 5 things you like about her.
Wonderful.
And they start thinking, well, she's a good mother. She's a beautiful person. She's creative. She's smart. And they could go on. All of a sudden, I said, that's why we never speak negative about the partner from the rest of the term. Never one negative word. You stop yourself and you have the help of the other people to say, stop. And the wonderful thing about the group is that they all come thinking that they're the only ones. Their story is a terrible story, and they're the only ones that have it. So when 8 different people or 10 different people tell their story and they realize that, oh my God, he has the same story, but it's worse.
Why?
And you start building this trust in this group of a relationship of, in a way of love, where they could start responding to each other, giving each other 8 men that at the end of a session could stand together and go around and appreciate each other and say what they like about each other.
Beautiful.
And what they like about the group and appreciating the group. I've only had one man that left the group. One man, and he was a psychologist or working with children.
Okay.
And he came because he got divorced. And he wanted us to see that what he had done was right. He had stopped seeing his daughter, who was 4 years of age, because she was calling the new man in his ex-wife's life father.
That's why he stopped.
He couldn't take it. He said, she calls him
That's why
father.
he stopped the connection with his little girl.
Yeah. And he wanted us to agree with him. And I said, I'm sorry, but I cannot agree with you. You're a child psychologist, psychiatrist. And I said, can anybody in this group agree with him? No, you have to do everything to show your child you love her.
Of course.
All the time, every minute you have to connect with them and say, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Because especially in these things where the child has not seen the father for 2-3 years, the father has to continuously, in every way he can, letters, email, whatever he could use, any way he can, let the child know that he loves, because the child has been so influenced by the other partner, by the mother, against the father, that it's really an uphill battle for him to break this pattern. The first thing he has to do is to get the reassurance of his partner that I've learned something. I've learned that I'm responsible partly for what's happened. And when he can tell her that,
His ex. When he could tell his ex that.
when he can tell her that, then that could break the pattern.
Yes.
And she could look at it and say, oh my God. He sees that he was part of what happened.
And if he could give her, like you said, if he could start giving her appreciation to his ex, that could break the ice, can't it?
Could break the ice incredibly. And I've seen it happen so many times. The cases where they've gotten back together after 2-3 years. Last year I got a email from a man. He said, I'm back with my wife, my ex-partner. This is after 4 years. I said, it's fantastic. He followed her down to another city. She didn't want him to be there. He was persistent. He said, I know what I've done. I'm sorry. I see what I've done. I'm very sorry for what I've done. And eventually, she forgave him.
And he appreciated her.
And he appreciated her. He said, I think you've been a fantastic person, a wonderful mother. And then, all of a sudden, they started doing things together. And then they got back together again.
Just that simple thing of taking responsibility for his role in the breakup.
Yeah.
And giving her an appreciation like, you did the right thing here, or you're a good mother, or you were right to leave. You've seen it happen over and over again, have you not?
Yeah.
Just by them doing those two things. Then they get the right to see their child. The ex will give him the right to see the child. It happens a lot, yes?
It happens a lot. But they have to go into... It becomes a very deep work sometimes. I go rather deep with them.
They can't pretend it.
They can't pretend it, no.
No.
Which means they have to go into the past patterns of what happened to them as a child. And working to relieve them of some of the stress which they don't even see, to relieve them of the violence and the non-love that they had received in many cases. To be able to see what happened to me at 2 years of age, what happened to me at 4 years of age. Why do I behave the way I behave? Because unless they see why they behave the way they behave, they can't break the pattern. So even with these men, it goes into some rather deep work of releasing patterns, for them to be able to accept their part in what happened. Why did I do this? Why did I start working 12 or 15 hours a day instead of being with my family? What triggered me? Why didn't I want to be with them? Who were they? Who does she represent in my life? Who does this woman, who is she? Who is she? When I was 2 years of age, who does she? It's my mother. She left me because she's pregnant. She needs to be by herself, but I didn't see it that way. I thought that she left me. So I behaved as the little 2-year-old that ran off and started looking for attention someplace else. Oh, okay. I'm not a 2-year-old anymore. I could be here. I don't have to be right about this. I don't have to be right about what I've done. I could see it. I could say, I'm sorry. I could forgive myself. But you can't do it unless you see the pattern. Unless you see who the person is that you're reacting to. So you have to go into that part of the work. Otherwise it becomes only in the mind. It becomes very superficial. The forgiving.
And if you apologize and you haven't done the work, your ex will know it.
But they know it immediately. Immediately.
It will do no good at all.
It does no good. It becomes worse. Even becomes worse. You're faking. You're trying to fool me. You're trying to trick me.
Indeed.
So that even becomes...
So, and let's say I'm a man and I'm looking for a group. I mean, I think it's so important, a group like you're talking about, led by a guy like you, frankly. So the men watching us, how could they find a group like yours or somebody like you who leads groups like this? What is it? What is it? Do they need to Google men's groups, or how should
Well,
they go
they,
about it?
they need to Google men's group, but it's very difficult, because a lot of men's groups are politically active in wanting to change the laws, the rules, wanting to be acknowledged that they're right. So a lot of men's groups are very negative in that way because they want to be told that they want to use social offices, changing laws, forcing the partner to have them see the child.
Right.
There's very many groups like that, too many groups like that.
Okay.
Then you have self-help groups, which work the same way. They start off nicely, but then it becomes a self-help group of negative feelings. It's all right to talk negative about the other person,
Yeah, or the other group, the
or
opposite
the
sex.
opposite sex.
Yeah.
So we were a what do you call it? A group that's called We Fathers. That started with the first-time father groups. The father's going to have children, and then it expanded into the divorced father groups.
The what? The first part?
The first-time father was the first,
Yes.
and then it came. I don't know where you find these groups. Like, I've
Well, maybe they have to do some searching.
you have to do quite a
Maybe
bit
you
of
have to
searching.
Google fathers groups and men's groups and just look for a type of group like Robert is talking about, led by somebody like him, because it sounds like the most important work.
It's definitely the most important work because without looking into yourself, forgiving yourself, loving yourself, being honest with your partner, and I mean being honest, really honest that I forgive you for what you've done. This is my part in it. This is what I've done. This is what I've seen that I've done. Can you forgive me for being such a... And she could say no at the beginning, but then he comes back and he says, well, I found this out about myself too. That I put you in the role of my mother, or you in the role of my father. You're not my mother, you're not my father. But that's what I was reacting to. I was reacting to things that you did, and I felt you were leaving me. And it's all my own responsibility. It's all my own problem. It's not your problem. I put it on you as your problem. It's my problem. And I can see that now. Please forgive me. You've triggered things in me, which I've put back onto you, blaming you for them. And I see that it's only me. It's only me. You have your problems. That's your state of the world. Take care of those things. But that's not I can't... if you look at it this way, I'm not responsible for anybody else but myself. I'm not responsible for anybody else, and can never be responsible for anybody else because I'm not them. I can only be responsible for myself. I could support somebody else. I could try to give somebody else the support they need if I could see it and do it without wanting something back. I can support my children. I'm not responsible for them. I cannot be responsible for them. They live their own lives. But I can support them. And unless you realize that you're not responsible for your parents, you're not responsible for your spouse, you're not responsible for anybody but yourself, you're going to end up being the controller. I'm responsible for you, and I know what you need.
Oh, that's a recipe for disaster.
That's definitely a recipe for disaster. I know, and men are very good at this, which is what women hate. Women hate this. I know what you need. Try this. And this is one of the things we work in the first-time father groups. don't tell the woman what she needs. Ask her,
Yes.
can I suggest something? She'll say yes or no.
And let it be a suggestion and not a demand. As Marsha Rosenberg talks about, there's a huge difference.
Mm.
And often we confuse them.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
And women, they need the time to think. They'll solve their own problem, but it may take 15, 20 minutes instead of your 2 seconds. Do this. And it becomes that we say it in a rather manly, demanding way. It's not like, do you have a suggestion? Would you like me to give you a suggestion? I think perhaps this might help. Are you interested? And if you do it in a loving way, she might say yes. She may say no, and then what happens to you? Do you discoil? Do you become fearful?
then it was a demand. If you react that way, then you're demanding to bring.
No, you don't have to be demanding, but
And
in the expectation of a yes answer and not getting it, you recoil because you feel that you're not wanted all of a sudden.
right.
This goes back into the man's feeling of being alone. The space of being alone, the space of being where there's no help.
Marsha Rosenberg says, how could you tell the difference between a giraffe request? The giraffes are the ones who speak the language of the heart, and a jackal demand. He says you can't tell the difference by the way it's suggested or asked. You could only tell whether it was a request or a demand by the way the person reacts if he hears a no.
Mm.
If he hears a no and he gets all upset, then you know it was a demand and it wasn't a suggestion or a request. So,
That's true, but the man doesn't know that it's a demand because he hasn't
No.
developed. He hasn't gone through he hasn't discharged that hurt from the little child.
indeed.
So he doesn't know that the recoil is that he said it as a demand because he doesn't see it.
No, he does not.
He doesn't see it.
And another thing that they teach in nonviolent communication, they say that the jackal is always trying to fix people. And whereas the giraffe understands that you can't really fix anybody, but you can listen and hear what they're feeling and needing and reflect that back to him. The jackal is always right away with suggestions and trying to fix. And that's not what people really want very often.
No. But we get into that already at the beginning because you have two people that are incomplete, looking to be fulfilled by the other. You already have expectations and disappointments right at the beginning. And what did you say? You said something about the demands, about
the difference between a request and a demand. And you could only know whether it was a jackal demand or a giraffe request by how a person reacts when the
Right.
person says no.
right,
Then you know whether it was a demand or a request.
right. But you also
They have a
the,
right to say no.
Yeah, and you're allowed to take it. You're allowed to say, oh, she said no. What does it mean to me? She said no. How do I react to that? Okay. That was simple. She said no. What can we do now? But I mean, we're with also very many women in the mother mood of protecting, the mother mood of taking care of, fall into position of, I'll change him.
Okay, we know this doesn't work.
I'll change him to fit what I need.
No.
I'll change him because I see in him somewhere this beautiful man who's not violent. And, okay, who are you actually changing? And you ask them, who does this man represent to you? Who do you want to change? Who does look and tell me who he represents to you? My father. My father was violent. I wasn't able to change him. So this man becomes in place of the father.
Indeed.
And it's never going to work.
We do it all the time until we learn not to do it.
Yeah.
Robert, it's been wonderful. And I myself have learned a whole lot. And I'm just wondering if you'd like to sum up, or if you have some final words for our audience.
Well, the thing that came up is listen to your inner self. And every time you feel you have to be right, stop yourself and say, what do I have to be right about? And when you feel yourself reacting, you could go in and say, how old am I? How old am I in this instant? Can I see myself as a 2-year-old, 3-year-old? What am I reacting to? What's triggered me? It's going through a whole series of self-knowledge questions. And you may have to step back a few steps. You may have to say that I cannot talk to you right now. I need 5 minutes by myself. As I tell the fathers, the first-time fathers, you come home, you have your work with you, you're all pent up, you have the whole day, and you go into the house, and you all of a sudden they demand, the mother's been with the child all day, she's terribly tired, here, take the child. So I said, before you go in the door, take 2 minutes and say, I'm now at home. I'm going to go in and be loving. I'm going to be with my child. I want to be with my child. And leave everything else behind you. Before you open the door, you have to change your way of being before you even go into the house. You cannot bring things with you from outside. Because then you're bringing demands of being taken care of being the victim, of wanting something from the other person. So already there you have to completely go in and become the loving man, the caretaker of the family.
And friends, it'll take practice. Nobody's expecting you to do this overnight.
It takes a lot of practice, a lot of work on yourself, a lot of going in and looking at what happened in your life and why it happened and who you were. And this could be going into even past lives. This could be going into a lot of different things of who you are, what you bring with you, and all these different things, how you've been brought up, everything. It's a huge spectrum, an incredible huge spectrum of what you bring with you into this world, and who you are, and how you react to the next person.
Okay.
And that we're all born good, and we're born with unconditional love, and we have it with us, and we know that. You just have to refine it. Have to bring it back to us. We have to be reborn into this. And it's possible.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Robert James.
Thank you, thank
And
you.
thank you all.